Welcome to Beyond the Numbers. I'm Josh, and this is the podcast where we have real and raw conversations about what health actually looks like within our churches and our ministries. Now, let me paint a picture for you. Have you ever been there where you are desperately clawing at getting hopefully one or two volunteers to sign up for your ministry? Every person has an excuse or a reason why they don't want to be part of it. Or maybe you've been on the other side. You easily build the teams, but it seems like right when you get them positioned how you want them, they decide to drop out. They're burnt out. They're upset. They don't want a part of your ministry or any ministry in general after that. Today we're going to ask the very hard but relevant question in our ministries, and that is, what is killing our volunteer culture? In the end, we want ministries where our volunteers thrive and not die. Thanks for joining me. Let's dive in as we go beyond the numbers. One volunteer that really shaped this whole idea of what we're building culture-wise is one that I worked with quite a long time ago. His name was Mr. Bobby. Mr. Bobby was seasoned, and as he put it, he was well seasoned. He was quite a bit older than most of the other volunteers that we had within this ministry. In fact, in some cases, he was double the age of most of our leaders within our ministry. Mr. Bobby came out of the rock and roll era and played drums for a lot of big people back in the day. And he had a lot of stories that went along with that too, looking at the good and the bad of living out that kind of lifestyle. Now, while people on the surface might look at Mr. Bobby and say, is he really what we want when it comes to attracting students to our student ministry? The truth is that you would look at how Mr. Bobby was. Almost every week after youth got out, he had students around him, talking to him, engaging with him, wanting some of Mr. Bobby's wisdom to just shed some light into their life. There were moments where he led small groups, and you could just see the growth happening within the students in that small group. Mr. Bobby was always consistent. Week after week, no matter what was going on, Mr. Bobby was there early to help me set up and stayed late to help me tear down. He was part of our youth worship band and played the drums like the rock star that he was. Mr. Bobby was always there, always guiding students to who God was. Not too long ago, we got to visit with Mr. Bobby, and he was just remembering the times that we worked in ministry together. And one of the things that he shared was how it was in those moments working with this ministry that he felt like he was the most used by God in a good way. It was at this ministry that he felt like he was equipped for the purpose and really pouring out into people's lives. And he says it was also one of the moments that he felt like he was growing the deepest in his walk with God. Now, while later leaders and organizations came through and looked at Mr. Bobby and said, he's not really what we want to kind of be the mascot for our ministry. The truth is, Mr. Bobby is everything that us seasoned leaders hope for in a volunteer. Now, while I aim to build my volunteer teams around those concepts, one in which our volunteers are growing in their walk with God. They're being challenged. They feel like they are affirmed and cared for. They feel like they are part of a team and not just a cog in a wheel. The truth is, I didn't start out that way. I mean, when I first got into the ministry, I was young and immature. And to a degree, probably a measure of pride as well. Unhealthy pride, I would say. See, in my head, the students only needed me. They only needed my words. They only needed my guidance. And so while I opened the door for volunteers, I didn't actually encourage them or build them up. In fact, if a volunteer came in and started connecting with youth, jealousy would rise within me. I'd get upset. It's why for the longest time I pushed away the idea of small groups, because within me I said, why do students need to hear from another leader when they can hear from their pastor? Forget about the fact that there are going to be certain people and students and different people within our ministry that other leaders are going to connect with on an easier level. To me, it was all me or nothing. And the truth is, looking back, it's one of those things that I wonder how many leaders I missed out on the opportunity to see built up and to step out in their faith on a deeper level because of my immaturity. Or how many students miss the opportunity for a leader to connect with them and challenge them in their walk in faith because of my pride. The truth is, looking back, it hurts the mistakes that I made when it came to being a leader that the next gen ministry that I was overseeing needed. But it's important to be able to look at those things and understand, hey, where have I kind of messed up here? Where have I gone astray here in the idea of building a thriving leadership team? So what are some of the red flags? What are some of the things that we can look at and say, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't healthy for my ministry, or maybe this isn't healthy for a ministry in general. Let's take some time and dive into some of these red flags that allow us to look at the health of our ministry and ask, is this really healthy? Is this what is killing my volunteer culture? One of the first red flags is that of choosing volunteers for convenience instead of calling. We've all been desperate. We've all needed volunteers to fill up our ranks, to help us out, to be there. But sometimes we can make that mistake of anyone coming along and saying, hey, I think I'd like to be plugged in here, and immediately saying, yes, sign on the line, that's awesome, and then just kind of throwing some material at them and hoping that they sink or swim. But how many times do we do that? It's a red flag when we're filling the roles based out of convenience and not the calling that God has placed within those people. That's when you run into issues like within the next gen ministry, you have volunteers that aren't mentors, but instead they're trying to be buddy-buddy with the students and won't actually challenge them in their walk because they just want to be seen as the cool person. Or when we have people that show no emotion and no energy for any of the roles that they're doing, and they're just there because in the end it's a job. Are we filling our roles for convenience, or are we actually filling those roles because of the calling that God has put within those volunteer hearts? Another red flag that we need to be careful of is when there's no clear training or expectations. When we don't give the boundary of expectations with our leader, then all we do is set them up for failure. Why? Because in our head, we know what we expect of them, but they have never received that. They need to know what they're stepping into, and then we need to make sure that we are equipping them. Nothing is scarier to a volunteer than being told, hey, you're stepping into this ministry, and not being told anywhere, anyhow, what they are doing. It's why many volunteers are confused and get burnt out easily, because they don't fully know what they're doing, because we have not given them proper training, and most importantly, outlined the expectations and the things that we expect them to do within the roles that we've given them. No expectation, no training, big red flag there. Another one. I don't know if you've ever overheard this conversation, but when one of your leaders gets a text from you or a missed phone call from you, and they look at it and go, what did I do wrong this time? If your leaders attribute you contacting them to them doing something wrong, then maybe you've missed something along the way. It's a big red flag is when our leaders attribute our contact with them with what they failed at doing. And yet, too many times, that's the only FaceTime some of our volunteers will ever see of us, is when we are letting them know they have done something wrong. It's a quick way to burn out our leaders and get them tired of even being around us or around our presence. Another red flag is when correction is more at getting revenge or just straight up cold-hearted because you are tired of what they are doing. When correction is more based off of our emotion than on guidance. And one of the other red flags is when there is no spiritual path for our volunteers, just schedules. When all they know is I'm scheduled, I show up, I do my role, and I go home, and there's no actual path, spiritual path that we have laid out for ourselves as leaders or given to them as volunteers of how we can continue to help them grow in their walk with God. In the end, it becomes a job, and that's it. And no matter how great the job is, how many times have you not wanted to go in to do a job or felt mistreated or hate the work that you have to do? We don't want that out of our volunteer team, and yet too many times they just see themselves as scheduled people instead of people that are on a spiritual path for growth within the roles that they are fulfilling. If you have a team that is confused, stressed out, overworked, or maybe they just feel invisible, sometimes the problem lies within the things that we have allowed to be part of our culture within our ministry. So while we avoid those red flags, what are the green flags? What are the things that we can look at to start doing within our ministry to create health? What does a real, healthy volunteer culture have within it? Let's start unpacking it with this one statement that I have learned over the years of working with volunteers, is that they don't just need perks. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like to do little things that encourage my leaders and tell them thank you. We like to do events a couple of times a year that let our leaders know how valued they are. But more importantly, the one thing that you can do to really spark them is give them a purpose. Let them know that they are in this ministry because of a specific purpose, and that God is awakening them and guiding them and leading them and growing in their walk with God by fulfilling this purpose. Pouring into these students, opening the door for people, being the face of the ministry, the first person that they see when they walk in, whatever that role is that we are filling, we want to make sure that they know that they serve a purpose for being there. So what are some of these green flags? What does a healthy ministry look like? The first thing is this: our volunteers are pastored, they're not just positioned. Are we actually pastoring our volunteers? I learned a long time ago that the volunteers that God gives me within a ministry aren't just there to serve the purpose of being someone I can delegate stuff to. But as a pastor over students, God is also allowing me to be a pastor to these volunteers. It's a level of responsibility that we actually have to start opening our eyes to with the volunteers that we are working with. And when we do that, we realize you're not just a role filler, but what am I doing to help guide you spiritually? What am I doing to check in on you and your walk with God and make sure you're not only growing and thriving in Him, but like, what are ways that I can help you, come alongside of you, pour into you? Another sign of health is when expectations are clear before there's ever a conflict. We've been there before, where we have to help correct or redirect one of our leaders. It's not something we want to do, but it's something that becomes necessary at times and places. And can I tell you, if you've already laid out those expectations, it's a whole lot easier to say, hey, this is where you're not lining up. But with that whole level of pastoring, here's what we can do to help grow you in this area. Here's what we can do to help redirect you with the path that you're on. See, it's about not being cold, but about seeing them as people that need spiritual guidance. But when we've laid out those expectations, it allows us to approach those areas of correction a lot easier than just saying, hey, you messed up in a way that was in my head and not something that I've ever vocalized. Expectations are necessary not only to give them confidence in the roles that they've been assigned, but also helps us when we have to correct. And if it comes to the point where we're correcting and we're scrambling to figure out what they did wrong and how to correct it and everything like that, then oftentimes it's a bit too late to try to piece that all together. That's why expectations laid out before there's ever an issue allow us to help smooth over and guide over and address those areas that are needed without extra conflict. With that, we also look at the idea that training is important, not just for the expectations, but to make sure that our leaders are equipped when they step into the roles. One of the biggest things that burns people out is when they don't know what's expected of them or how to go about doing what they need to do. We don't want to plug someone into a small group without ever knowing how to run a small group. We don't want someone greeting at the door without telling them, hey, open the door. I realize it's common sense, but in the same aspect, we want to make sure that our leaders are so equipped, they walk in with confidence knowing what is expected of them and how to go about doing that. And with that training, it needs to be ongoing. It can't be the first time they show up, we slap them with some paperwork, and then hope it all works out. Throw them into the water and hope that they learn how to swim. But again, with that pastoring mentality, we need to make sure that we're continuously following up with them. A training a couple times a year, following up with individual leaders. allowing there to be room to talk if they ever need to share some hurts or things that they've struggled with or things that they're not understanding, allowing there to be ongoing training to help continue to grow them to be the most confident and strong team that you will ever lead. Another sign of a healthy volunteer culture is one where wins are celebrated no matter how big or how small. We all want to share that celebration when that student that someone has been pouring out to for the longest time accepts Jesus. I mean, that's something that we want to celebrate. But are we choosing to celebrate all of the different wins, no matter how big and how small? And as a leader, that means we need to be more aware of what our leaders are doing. For every leader that leads someone to Christ, there's also 10 other leaders sometimes that are pouring over the students that just don't seem to be able to make that decision yet. Are we encouraging them and thanking them and appreciating them and sharing the win that, yes, that you might not have led them to God yet, but I see what you're pouring into, and I see that spark of understanding that student had for the first time. Again, it goes along with giving our leaders purpose is when we share those wins, when we notice those wins, and when we celebrate them as a team, no matter how big or how small. Everyone starts to feel like they are giving input. They are being appreciated. They're needed within this ministry. A healthy sign is when encouragement is consistent and not just for the MVPs. No one wants to do the same job over and over and never be noticed. But maybe we have. We need to make sure that we are encouraging our leaders. And while there are certain ones that are going to be in the spotlight and we see them doing the most, for every one of those, there's 2 that are behind the scenes, putting things together, working the sound, building sets, ministering to students when we aren't fully aware of it. Are we encouraging our leaders even when they're not the ones in the spotlight? Encouragement needs to be consistent and not just to the main ones that are in the spotlight getting the attention, but to notice those that might not be on the forefront of the ministry. Encourage them, lift them up, make them feel not only that they've seen, but they are serving a purpose in the kingdom of God by helping with this ministry that you're part of. And the final thing, laughter and flexibility are not a weakness. They're encouraged within our ministries. It's so important that we grow together through laughter, through encouragement. If you are not taking the time to spend with your team off campus every once in a while, doing different activities, getting them in situations where you can see the goofiness or you can see the playfulness or you can start teasing each other or whatever, then you're missing a huge opportunity for growth within your team. My point of view is this: if I can get my team laughing, and not like the whole pity laugh, but I'm talking about laughing because of the fun that they're having or the jokes that are being said or the teasing and the ribbing that they're doing to each other or whatever, like those things are key to build that community that we want our leaders to have. And when we've built that community, it makes it easier for us to train our leaders to start looking for the gaps that we might have missed. If you have a small group leader that's out, is there someone else that can flex just for that one day to fill in that role? Or do we have leaders that are so stuck in our ways, they're like, I just don't want to do it. No, I was here to open a door and that's all I'm doing. Flexibility and laughter are huge within finding a healthy rhythm and a healthy culture for our volunteers. I hope by now maybe you're starting to see, hey, these are some of the areas where I need to learn and grow with my volunteer teams, or these are some of the areas that I can step up into and start to see my team changed and encouraged and lifted up, see growth really start to happen within our teams. I hope more than anything you're understanding that you're not just building a roster, you're discipling a team. And I think more than anything, sometimes we're so focused on scheduling and filling roles that we forget the discipleship that needs to happen with our volunteers as well. So what are some action steps that we can walk away with today? What are some steps that you can start to take to redirect the culture? Or maybe you've got no volunteers right now and you're like, how do I even build this? I'm looking at it and there's 4 billion different directions everyone is telling me to go. How do I start building a healthy foundation and culture for my volunteer team? Let's look at some of those action steps. The first one, if you kind of already haven't picked this up in the conversation, is to start seeing your volunteers as more than volunteers, but as people that you are pastoring. As I said earlier, when we start to do that, it changes the responsibility level for this leadership team. They're no longer people that are filling roles. They're souls that God has put under us to help guide and lead and draw closer to Him. Working in Next Gen, what God started doing within me is started to realize that I'm a youth pastor, but I'm also a volunteer pastor as well. So to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to help encourage them in their walk with God, to ask them some of the deeper questions, to check in with them and see how they are doing in life and with their family, to actually show an interest and a care in them as people. I mean, realize you're not just overseeing volunteers and managing them. You're leading the leaders of your students. You're leading the people that are going to be the face for your ministry. You're leading those who help connect others with God. The next one, and I kind of feel like I've heard this somewhere else. I would say a great resource that I pulled from a long time ago was from the Youth Ministry Coach. I think I said that name right. But they have a really, really great podcast. And in there was one that she did about small groups. And this might have come from it. And if it did, it's a person a whole lot smarter than me. But I've stuck with this in every volunteer culture that I've worked with since, and that is this. It's going to sound very micromanaging, and it's going to sound like it's going to take away some of the glory from your encouragement, but I think it's important. That is, schedule your encouragement. I know it's not really I got to schedule when I'm going to talk to certain people and when I'm going to encourage them, but I've learned if you're anything like me, our heads can be so scatterbrained dealing with every single event, every single person, this thing, the surprise visit, the teaching for this week and all that kind of stuff, that with the best intentions we'll say, I want to encourage my leaders and this week I'm going to do it, and then because it's not scheduled, it isn't a priority and we forget about it. So we say it next week and we forget about it next week. Start taking time to start penciling in when you are going to encourage your leaders and what leaders you're going to encourage. I find that's the best way is I'm going to do these couple of today and I'm going to do these next week or whatever. And that way you're making sure your entire team over the span of a month is getting a word from you, an encouraging word from you, and they're feeling appreciated and needed. If we don't do it, if we don't make time to schedule something, then how much of a priority is it really? We want to make sure our leaders are encouraged and know that they matter. When we do this, it also helps us open our eyes to some of the smaller things we might not see on a weekly basis. But when we look at it, we say, oh, wow, that was great what they just did. That thing that they just said to the student was amazing. The way they smiled and engaged with someone as they walked through those doors, man, that's awesome. Next time I encourage them, I want to mention this. Make it real, make it personal, but make sure you're scheduling it. Another action step we can take is to clarify the why. I'm not saying when someone comes to work with your volunteer team, you need to have an all-out, deep interview with them, but it's important to sit down with those people and ask, why do you want to be here? For youth ministry, for Next Gen, my thing would be, why do you like working with this youth ministry? Why do you want to be a part of this team? And part of it is, especially working with the youth ministry, you are gatekeeping. You're trying to make sure that those that are interacting with your students are on the healthier level. But it also gets them to start sharing and tapping into some of their passion and some of their heart behind why they want to do it. For me, when I hear someone that is excited about taking part in student ministry, heck, when I have someone that's sharing about why they love working with middle schoolers, anyone that wants to work with middle schoolers, if they have a heart behind it, heck yeah, that's amazing. Do you know sometimes it's the hardest role to fill? And so if someone is deeply passionate about it, for me, that just gets me even more focused and passionate about the ministry and about finding those right areas to plug them in, but get them to verbalize it. One, because sometimes it'll create a heart check. If they're doing it just to fill a role, then I really appreciate it. But I think there's other roles for you. I've learned a long time ago, I'm never going to have someone work within our youth ministry because we need a role to fill. I see through that, and more importantly than that, students see through people who are fake, who don't really care about them and aren't there for them. I want a leader that's passionate for youth. And so if I have a choice between 10 leaders who just are there because they have the night free and 5 leaders who are passionate for our students, I will always choose those 5 that are passionate for our students. But when you ask the why, you start to begin to see and hear the heart behind them and why they want to be involved. And then take point to write that down. Because then you can remind them a couple months, a year down the road, when they've had a bad day, when they feel like the students they're working with, nothing's getting across to them, when they feel like, why am I doing this? You can remind them about the why. This is why you stepped into this ministry, and this is why you are so valuable to us. This is why you are still being used by God. This is your purpose, and we so appreciate you for it. Another action step you can take is to give them freedom with boundaries. As we've stated over and over, training and expectations are important. And more importantly, why we do that is because it then gives us the bounds to say, this is your expectations. This is the lane we want you to stay in, but you have freedom to move around in that lane however you want. But we do that because we know that we've trained them and equipped them to do those things. And can I tell you what, for a lot of these leaders, when they feel that confidence and then they know they have a level of freedom that they can operate in, sometimes it brings out the best of our leaders. Also, sometimes it gives them opportunity to show other skills and talents that they don't know and we don't know. But it's important that that training happens and we give them the lines to work within, and then we see that coming alive within them. When a volunteer knows that they have built a level of trust in you and you have confidence in what they are doing within your ministry, it speaks volumes, and we see it out of the way that these leaders act and react with the students, with the ministry that they're a part of, with the roles that they are given. But it only comes from when we're being very purposeful about making sure that we have equipped our leaders and our volunteers for success within our ministries. And then the final thing, pray for them, privately and out loud. If you have a moment before each of your big meetings, get together with your team and pray for them out loud. Ask prayer requests and pray for them as they are there. Lead your group in prayer. Let them know that this isn't another program, but that this is spiritual guidance, that what they're doing here echoes through eternity in the kingdom of God. And so because of that, we are going to pray and spiritually lead our leaders. But then also in those private times, it's those moments for you to cry out on behalf of your leaders. One thing that I've always done, because my memory goes, and sometimes I forget people's names and all that kind of stuff, I take the most recent picture of my students, or in this case, I take a recent group photo of our leaders. And I just go down the list, looking at them in the picture and praying for them individually. You might not be able to do some whole long list of prayer, but you can pray for them by name and go down that list, praying for them, interceding for them. Then when we do it in person and we pray over them in person and we uplift them to God in person, it lets them know that, again, they're not just cogs in a wheel, but they matter, and their spiritual being matters, and we are helping guide and lead them and lift them up in prayer to God. And can I tell you what? That makes all the difference in the world for some of these volunteers. I hope you've walked away with some really great idea of things to avoid, things to fix within your volunteer culture, but also importantly, the right steps and the right idea of what health looks like. But maybe you're listening to this and you've been a product of a bad team. You've been burnt out as a volunteer. You've helped others and you got ripped up and chewed out. You're like, I didn't just hit one of those red flags. I got hit by all of them. Then what do we do for health? Because this isn't just about creating a healthy culture, but it's about finding health and restoration in God as well. I think it's important to start living out some healthy practices if we've experienced those wounds. And one of the first things is sometimes to take a step back, to find some rest, rejuvenation in God. So we take that step back. Why? Because oftentimes we're bleeding from our soul and it's not healthy for us. It's kind of like that airplane warning that they give you when you're on the plane. If the oxygen mask drops down, what do? Even if you have a kid with you, you put it on yourself first. You take care of yourself first, so then you can take care of the kid. And in the same way, if you've experienced that hurt, it's important for you to take a step back, to allow yourself to begin that process of healing and allowing God to do that work. I would also encourage you to find someone that you can talk to, that you can open up with, that you can share the hurts. Too many of us, we silo ourselves out. And because of that, we just feel the pressure of it growing and growing, and the pain growing and growing within us. And sooner or later, it just starts to fester and grow worse. Find those outlets that you can talk to in a healthy way and share what is going on. Then take a look and start to see, kind of like that why question we asked earlier, look at healthy ministry and the way that it's done healthy, and start to see what health really looks like. Many of us have been so burnt out by toxic cultures across the board that we don't know what healthy looks like. So as a volunteer, as a person that is filling a role, as stepping into the ministry again, start to look at what health is and what healthy looks like so you appreciate it more. And then step back into those roles when the joy has returned. And what I mean by that is do it when you have the passion and the heart behind it in a healthy ministry, instead of doing it because you're guilted, because they just need someone to fill this role. They just need to do this. I'm not doing enough of God's work. Never make that step back in out of guilt, but instead do it out of joy. I want to close today with this week's anchor verse, and it comes from 1 Peter 4:10. And it says this: each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Realize this: no matter what you've been told, no matter what you've done ministry-wise, you are more than just a body. You're more than just someone that fills a role. You are a minister of Christ, and He has equipped you, created you with a plan and a purpose and skills to be used to share Him with others. Are we using everything that God has equipped us with for His work? And then realizing everyone's looks different. Everyone's gifts look a bit different. That's why we're one body, many parts, but one body. So don't compare yourself with others. Don't try to say, well, because I'm not flashy enough, I can't do this. Instead, use the gift and the skills that God has given you to shine Him to others. See, volunteers are the heartbeat of ministry. Working in Next Gen Ministry, they are the heartbeat of what we do. We need our volunteers, and we need them strong. And most importantly, as a pastor, I want my volunteers thriving in their walk with God. So then they're not just scraping the surface of their walk, but they can dive deeper and challenge the students to dive deeper. We want our teams to thrive and not dive. So hopefully with what we've talked about today, there are action steps that you can take. There are areas of health that you can start to implement within yourself and within your ministry. I hope something in today's topic has reached out to you. It's grabbed a hold of you. If anything that we've talked about really struck you in a deeper chord, then leave a comment, leave a like. Reach out to me. I'd love to hear your story and get to see. Maybe you have an idea when it comes to building volunteer teams that makes your team so successful. And if that is true, I would love to hear what you're doing right. In fact, that kind of leads to where we're going next week. Next week, we're going to have the first of what I call Voices in the Field. And what it is we've talked with other pastors from varying backgrounds and varying church sizes to see what makes their ministries so healthy when it comes to volunteers. It's a perfect opportunity to hear what other people are doing across cultures and across the area to thrive within their volunteer base. So next week, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be interviewing some of these pastors that maybe we never would have heard their story, heard their ideas, heard what they are doing within their ministry. But because of this, we want your voices. We want to hear their voices. Why? Because a healthy ministry isn't just based off of numbers alone. What we're going after here is healthy ministry. So join us next week as we talk with a few pastors about what is working within their ministry. Who are some volunteer people within their ministry that they are proud of? What makes their volunteer ministry thrive? And maybe what we can do to learn and grow our volunteer ministry in the healthiest of ways. Following that, the week after, we're going to be diving into a deep, heartfelt topic. For many of us, we have a wife, we have kids, we have a spouse, we have a relationship that we're in. Maybe we're just dating someone and we haven't gotten married yet. For many of us, we have a significant other that we are trying to balance ministry with them. And sadly, too many times, they get the leftovers. So in 2 weeks, we're going to dive into the topic of how we lead healthy within our ministry without giving our family our second best. Again, hopefully this podcast meant something to you. If it did, like, share, subscribe as we work together to go beyond the numbers. Thanks. Lots out of necessity and not out of need. Convenience column. One of the first red flags that we need to be aware of is when we're filling volunteers out of... Welcome back to Beyond the Nut One of the first red flags